Hi, thanks for tuning in today to TV2. We're here on the front porch of the Copeland Community Center for one of our front porch conversations, and I hope you'll enjoy visiting with us as well. Today our guests are Crosby and Judy Hatch, and welcome so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
And you know, for me, one of the neat things about the front porch conversations in the last few months is we've discovered this great porch to be on. And a number of people who've come have said it's kind of a surprise to us. We never thought about it being here. And
It's true. They don't use it very much.
it is. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Judy, where were you born and grew up?
I was born in Concord, New Hampshire. I grew up there for a few years, but then my family moved to New York City, where my father's family lived. But in 5th grade, we moved back up to New Hampshire, and I lived there through high school, and I went to the University of New Hampshire and studied to be, I took home economics, but I became a kindergarten teacher.
Gosh, I have a degree in home economics too, and I've never worked in that field.
Yeah.
Unless you call retirement home a big,
Right.
home management process.
Well, I worked in the nursery school on campus and all, and took a
Oh,
lot
you
of, early childhood courses. So kindergarten seemed to be a good fit afterwards.
Good. And what about you, Crosby? Were you born and where'd you grow up?
I was born in Plymouth County, a little town called Wareham, Massachusetts, which is the southern entrance to the Cape Cod Canal. And at the time, my mom and dad and my 2 brothers, one other brother hadn't been born yet. We lived in Carver, Massachusetts, which is sort of in between Wareham and Plymouth. And that was cranberry bog country. And after maybe 3 or 4 years, probably 4 years, my folks found a really nice old farmhouse in West Wareham, Massachusetts, which was probably only about 4 miles from where they lived in Carver. And that's where we lived the rest of my growing years. And it was a wonderful experience. Many of the roads in Plymouth County, at least the section that we lived in, were still dirt roads. And both my mom and dad were brought up in Plymouth, and it was just a wonderful experience.
And Judy, do you have siblings?
I have one brother who is living in Fall River, Massachusetts right now.
What are some of your favorite childhood memories?
Well, 5th grade, when we did move back to New Hampshire, we spent the year with my grandparents, and they lived on Lake Winnipesaukee in Meredith, New Hampshire. And we had a mile to walk to the school bus. So we walked to the school bus, a mile to the bus and a mile home afterwards. But my uncle, who's a year younger than I was, he of course lived there as well. And I have a younger brother, so the 3 of us would walk to the bus every day. But I just remember climbing trees, picking berries, and of course we had the lake. They lived right on the lake, so we ice skated in the winter time, and we boated and swam a lot in the summertime. So that was a favorite school year for me of growing up.
Through all the snow, you walked to the mile to the bus
we
stop.
did, yeah. And one day, the 3 of us walked 5 miles into town, and on the way back, a lady in a taxi, she stopped and she said, "Would you like a ride?" And of course we thought she was going to charge us being a taxi, so we said, "No, we'll walk." So we walked 5 miles back home. So that was a neat experience that year.
Crosby, what about you?
Well, since my dad grew up in Plymouth Center, more or less, we had the good fortune of having a family membership in what is known as the Plymouth Beach Club. And that was right down by Long Beach. Some people call it Town Beach. which is about 3 miles long. And the beach club was on one side of Eel River, and they piped salt water, freezing cold salt water, all the way into the pool and changed the water once a week. And I can remember once in a while being at the pool when they did change the water, and it made a big difference having that fresh water come in, because it didn't have a week long to warm up. And sometimes we'd get in and we'd swim in that warm water before they changed it, and then swim again after it came in via a 6-inch pipe, which is sunk on the bottom of the river. But
so how did they drain it?
What's that?
How did they drain
They
it?
had a 6-inch line that went out well beyond the mean low tide into the, which was really Cape Cod Bay up there, if you look at a map. But many wonderful experiences growing up, and the high school we had was quite nice in Wareham, and we just had a lot of good times.
Growing up in Plymouth, were you steeped in history?
Well, you know, the history was great. We had a wonderful church where was only about probably not even a half a mile from our house, Advent Christian Church in West Wareham. And there was a big difference going to church in our church in West Wareham, and then going over to a historic, formal, long-established, the First Church of Plymouth. And that was, but it was wonderful. And enjoyed it a lot, and had the great fortune of an experience of our Advent Christian Church there in West Wareham. Had established families that were part of that worship experience, and I can remember so many good times and Bible learning experiences.
Judy, or both of you, where did you meet? And
Well, I got a job teaching kindergarten on Cape Cod, and he lived just off of Cape Cod in West Wareham. And at that time, this was back in the early 1970s, there were people called matchmakers. So we both contacted this matchmaker.
so this was before eHarmony.
Right.
Yeah.
Before anything computer-wise. And several of the teachers, of course, had done that before me, so I thought, well, I'll give it a try. So Crosby, I think, was the second date I had, and when I found out that his family had horses or ponies or whatever, I thought, oh, that sounds wonderful, because I love horses, and I'd never owned one. So, but we did a lot of outside things, and we just had a lot of common interests, and so that's how we met. And so we got married in 1975, and because I had a job there teaching, we lived in a nearby community, and I bought my first horse and just got into horseback riding, and so we had 12 years, wonderful years of owning horses and riding, going to horse shows. And then in 1987, we moved to Maine, and we lived there until 2015 when we moved down here.
And I don't think either of you actually talked about where you went to college or your...
Well, I went to the University of New Hampshire. And
I went to Norwich University, which is in almost dead center in the state of Vermont. And that's a military college. Yeah.
And what was your field of study?
Well, I enjoyed mathematics in high school, and so when I got to college, that's what I majored in. And my dad was a pretty good builder, mostly residential construction, but he was a great woodworker as well. And Judy mentioned the fact that when we got married, she was teaching school, and it just so happened that I had been a teacher for a couple of years in Vermont, and as we approached that last winter before we got married, I was doing some substitute teaching at the local high school, and I decided that I would do construction work or building work in the summertime, but I do teaching during the regular school year because that substitute teaching led to a permanent job at the local high school where I graduated from.
And did you teach math?
Yes, I taught mathematics. My total math teaching was probably 9 years, and I taught a couple of years of industrial arts and woodworking.
And I understand woodworking is something you're still enjoying, is that right?
I do, yes. I think it's relaxing because I've done it for a while, and if I can help other people do that, then I find that even more enjoyable because I enjoy sharing what I know.
And Judy, I know one of your hobbies, we'll talk more about the outdoors, but is quilting.
Right.
Tell us how you got into that.
Well, after we moved to Maine, I decided I would take an evening class at the local high school on quilt making through the urging of some friends of mine. So I did, and that's how I got started. I really enjoyed it, so I went out and bought a good machine and all the materials and things that you need to do it. And so I've just continued taking classes, learning things online and so forth. So, but it's been fun.
What's your favorite part of quilting?
Well, I do like paper piecing, but now that I have nieces and nephews getting married, I'm making small quilts to give to them, and their parents I gave quilts to when they got married, so that's sort of become a tradition. So, but I, do a variety of wall hangings and things too, but I do like making quilts. So.
Are you staying up with the number of marriages? I mean, as far as the quilts?
Yes, right. I have a grandnephew and a grandniece getting married this spring very soon, and so we just sent off quilts to them yesterday. But
and then do you have other craft hobbies?
well, once we moved to Maine, we got into things like kayaking and so forth, which is not really a craft, but it's a sport. And so we just continued with that. But I also like to take pictures with my camera. And once we moved to Maine, we had lots of outdoor opportunities to do that with the wildlife and the landscapes and things like that. So I got into that, continuing with that. And of course I like to read and cook and
You did
things
pretty
like
good with
that.
basket making.
Well, yes, I did make baskets for a number of years, yes.
Oh, wow.
Have not done that recently, but up in Maine I did. So we had lots of fun trying out different activities.
And Crosby, any other hobbies you have? I think you already enjoy kayaking as well, and
Yeah.
being out on the water.
I had a lot of privileges when I was growing up. Some of my cousins and my dad's relatives lived on private ponds. They were quite nice, real clean water, and fishing and canoeing on those at an early age. And there was an annual event in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts that we entered where we had to make our own boats, and it was about a 14-mile paddle through the swamps and the woods from the beginning of that river until it met the salt water, and that was a lot of fun. And so my interest in paddling carried on to when Judy and I got married. We did a little bit of that, but she mentioned as we got settled in Maine, we did kayaking up there. And that was one of the things that interested me about moving to Maine. I had 3 people from our church in West Wareham go up to northern New Hampshire and did some whitewater canoeing up there. And those rivers are a lot different than the rivers down there in Massachusetts that we were used to, larger and quicker. So that's a really wonderful shared interest.
Judy, I thank you for all the beautiful pictures that you take around the village and along the river. They're just beautiful, and it's just fun to travel with you rather than this. And I think probably you're taking pictures too.
I did a little bit of that when we first got married, but I'm more interested in doing really active things, but not having to worry about carrying a camera with me.
Yeah.
Binoculars, yeah. But
I've been fortunate. I have not had any turnovers in the kayak because I do carry my camera with me, but been
That was
very
what I was
blessed that
wondering what you
way.
take with you when you kayak.
Yes, I do, but I have a fairly wide kayak, so it's fairly stable, and I don't do whitewater kayaking at all.
Did you also grow up in the Advent Christian Church, Judy?
Actually, I did when we lived in New Hampshire with my grandparents because they attended the Meredith Advent Christian Church there. So I started then in the Advent Christian Church and just continued, especially when I moved down and we got married because there was one nearby there. So since then, we've been connected with the Advent Christian Church.
And is that connection what made you think about moving to Advent Christian Village, or?
Well, our former pastor, Pastor Penny, moved down here first, and he always encouraged us to come down to visit. So once I retired from teaching, we had the opportunity to spend a month down south. So the first month we spent down near Claremont, Florida, but we came up here and we visited, and we really liked it. So the second year we spent in South Carolina renting a condo for a month. We came again, and that's when we took the tour and got the paperwork and decided that this was a good fit for us. And so then we went home and prepared our house for sale, and I mean, God worked everything out. He had our house sold in just a few days, and we packed up, moved down here, and he provided a house for us here in Riverwoods, which we're very thankful for.
So was the river a big draw for both of you?
Well, you know, it was, but until we actually moved here, we didn't realize what a beauty it was, and the area. We're really impressed with the area, not only in the village and the nature trail and all the activities, but all of the state parks. I mean, this is a very rural part of Florida, and we weren't familiar with Florida at all before we moved down here. So it was pleasant to find so much of nature down here.
Well, and I think we're really fortunate in North Florida that there is so much national state park land.
Right.
And I guess it wasn't as pricey to buy, or they've had it a long time. And there's some big pieces in South Florida, big state parks as well, but I think that we have a lot right around us that are really special.
I agree. Right.
I know that you said you're not going to leave for the summer.
No.
This will be your first summer in Florida.
Our first summer to experience Florida. But that's all right. I have lots of indoor activities that I can be busy with, and I plan to use the pool once it's open. You know, and then if any part of the day that's cooler, we'll get outside for walks or whatever. And we like to play bocce. We have some bocce equipment, and we have set up a course not only out here in front of the Copeland Center, but also over near Meadowview Drive, which is shaded over there.
Okay.
So we have our friends that we play with 2 or 3 times a week when it's not so hot.
And you're probably looking forward to when pickleball can open back up again.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I certainly am. That's one of the things that we started. We moved here in September of 2015, and there's some great pickleball players here who had never heard the name pickleball.
For those people who are watching who might not know, tell us what pickleball is.
Well, pickleball is a game like tennis, but a lot different, a lot smaller area to cover, and fitting for older folks. Don't have to cover so much ground as you do in tennis. And Rob Crankshaw was, and a few other fellas, and women too, that already live here, were tennis players, and they fit right in and enjoyed that pickleball game.
And what is your racket like?
Well, it's more like
Ping pong
it's
paddle.
like a ping pong paddle is the best
Little bigger,
comparison. And the ball itself, some people would say, well, that looks like a wiffle ball. Well, yes, it looks like a wiffle ball, but the holes are more uniform than a pickleball holes. And they travel a lot slower and easier than tennis balls do, because they don't weigh very much. They're made out of
Do you have
lightweight
much
plastic.
control over how you hit it, where it goes?
You
I think
do.
a wiffle ball is not having much control over.
Yes, it will pretty much go where you want it to. This doesn't curve around too much, unless you're playing in the wind.
Right, the wind. But
And-
you can play it indoors too. That's nice, pickleball.
Yes.
Play indoors
Well,
or
the,
outdoors.
The good thing here is we have the youth camp that has the rump pavilion, which is well suited to a large indoor area. Plenty of room to set up. We actually set up the pickleball court in there, and easily 3 indoor courts there. So, and in the wintertime, when you can have a cool breeze, doesn't take much of a breeze to start freezing in the wintertime here. But we have the, as Judy mentioned, we have the option of going indoors or outdoors. But it's caught on with a fair number of people that have become dedicated to it.
Was there anything once you moved to the village that surprised you?
Well, we were just tickled pink that everybody was so friendly. And then we also were very happy to get into some volunteer positions.
Would you talk to us both about what how you volunteered?
Well, I volunteer at the village library, and I, of course, do some TV2 scheduling. And one night a week, every other week, we were spending at the desk out here at the when it was open, and then we deliver the F&N into the Wildwood Drive people. So we keep busy.
In addition to the Copeland Community Center and the F&N deliveries, I've been working with Charles Moore and a few other people too, and we've had damage storms come through, and they make some of the nature trails impassable. Go in there on a volunteer basis and do clearing in those nature trails and keep them going so people can pass through, especially the areas that handicapped people might enjoy the nature trails with their golf carts. And just a lot of fun.
And I know, Judy, not too long ago, you posted some wildflowers that you had seen on the
Yes.
nature trail. Are there still some?
Well, we haven't really been out there recently because of the heat, and there are more bugs, and then the tick problem. You want to be sure to stay away from them. So, been mostly walking around the village, but there are beautiful flowers in homes or in the yards.
I think
around.
that's one thing I've noticed on our
Yes.
neighbors in Riverwoods, that I think they've gotten more active in their yards.
True.
Yeah.
More time to stay home, or maybe people who are thinking, well, I'll be here all summer and let's,
Right.
have something to enjoy.
That's true. And we feed the birds. We have a hummingbird feeder and another feeder where we attract birds such as cardinals and red-bellied woodpeckers we've seen, and then some of the smaller birds. So, we enjoy sitting on our back porch and watching them. So that's been fun too.
That has for me. I probably have been home more, than
Right.
I've ever been, because I just retired the end of last year.
Oh,
Or, I mean,
that's
the end of February. And I traveled a lot last year, after I retired. But I have just been so amazed at the number of birds in my yard, and I only have one little feeder out, and they're still coming. So
Do you have a bird bath as
I do.
well?
Mhm.
See, we have a small bird bath, but we're thinking of getting one with a bubbler on it to maybe attract some more.
Well, this is not an advertisement for Amazon, but I ordered one that's
Oh.
solar powered.
Oh, okay.
And
You like that?
yes, I've only had it going about a week or so, but the birds seem to like it.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come on if it's been raining and
Yeah.
it's sunny. But still, we have many days that are sunny. So, is there anything y'all would like to share with our viewers that we haven't talked about?
Well, I would encourage people to think about all the different activities that every Christian village offers. And just the long river frontage here, beautiful nature trails. Our church is great, and the Copeland Community Center right here where we are offers a lot for people. As we've traveled, I have grown because I enjoy swimming. I'm not a great swimmer, but having an indoor, well-maintained, heated pool is just a wonderful experience, and I found it's quite rare. And I would encourage a lot of people that like the water, just if you haven't been down here, come down to the Copeland Community Center.
If you were to think of advice for a young child, what would you tell? Or a young person, not necessarily a child. Some life advice.
Learn your Bible. Yeah.
Right.
Very good advice.
And associate with people who love the Lord, and hopefully, they'll grow to love the Lord as well. Yes.
Yeah. Love your parents.
Of your parents.
Right. Obey your parents.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us, and we want to thank the birds for joining us for their
Yes.
conversation too.
Yeah,
and their
it's been great.
concert.
It's been neat.
Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us for another edition of Front Porch Conversations.